Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I'll be running through my transfer plans ahead of Game Week 13. Hopefully, it will help you out as well. Let's not waste any time. Let's get straight on with the video. Right then, so let's get started by looking at my team performance from Game Week 12. Not to talk about it for too long, but it does, of course, help with the transfer decisions moving into Game Week 13. 65 points for me so far with a hit, so 61 net, but overall enough for a green arrow, and I still have two players left to play tonight. At time of recording, it's Monday morning, so we've still got Lewis Hall and Alexander Isak to play in the afternoon, or in the evening rather, against West Ham at home. So I'm hoping maybe to even break into the top million by the time you see this video. However, things could go a completely different way and both players could get injured, sent off, whatever, and it could of course get a lot worse from here as well. But my hopes are high for now. Now, looking at my team in particular, double Arsenal clean sheet has finally come in with some points. Clean sheets for Raya and Gabriel, very helpful, and have probably taken me over the edge into a green arrow. And the fact that their defensive data has been good has been basically the only reason I've held on to them this long. They've been very frustrating, but with the fixtures now on the horizon, I think double Arsenal defence will be a little feather in my cap, and I have no plans of getting rid of them in the next few game weeks. Pedro Porro has been undoubtedly the highlight of the FPL season for me this game week. When that goal went in, especially because I had Solanke getting the assist as well, I don't think I've celebrated a goal in FPL terms as much as that all season. Definitely the highlight of the season so far. 14 points from him. He held on to the clean sheet, got the goal, and got 2 bonus points as well. So that is more than I could have ever possibly imagined from Pedro Porro. But I did want to start him this week because the upside is always there. There was a little bit of old club mentality as well, so that is more of a subjective matter. But overall, Porro really did exceed expectations. Very happy with that, and obviously another reason I've been able to have a decent game week so far. Now, moving into midfield is where a lot of the problems lie. Not with Mo Salah, who's extremely consistent, 16 attacking returns so far for him this season, including 2 goals in Game Week 12 against my club, Southampton. And I don't think you'll see 2 more gifted goals for Mo Salah all season either. Obviously, massive goalkeeper error on the first one, and then a handball penalty, which was almost completely unenforced for the second goal. He comes away with 2 bonus points after taking his top off and reducing his BPS, so with the yellow card, of course. So that was a little bit frustrating, but obviously 13 points from your captain when a lot of the other alternatives like Haaland, like Palmer, blanked is very, very good news for me. Outside of that though, Palmer, as I mentioned, blanked, but obviously had the shot cleared off the line by his own teammate. Very frustrating, but these things do happen, or especially seem to be happening to me this season. And I do still think that he's going to be a very worthwhile player to have over the coming stretch of fixtures for Chelsea. Outside of that though, Mbeumo, Semenyo and Rodgers all frustrating at the moment. Semenyo in particular got his 5th yellow card. Annoying, but not unexpected because he was on 4 yellows. We knew the suspension was looming, and that is why I have 8 attackers, so I can bench him 1 week and hopefully not have to make a transfer there, because the Bournemouth fixtures are still looking pretty good over the medium to long term. Mbeumo, however, has been frustrating. Very few shots in the last 3 game weeks. In fact, I think only 1 on target in the last 3 game weeks. Don't quote me on that, but I saw that somewhere on X recently. Now, with him, he has been playing a lot wider recently, especially with Wissa playing up top. Thiago's coming back in as well, by the way. So I do have this feeling that Mbeumo is becoming less important as a player, as an FPL asset to own, and I am starting to think that over the next couple of game weeks he might become the make weight for another pick or 2 in my midfield. Rodgers, I'm maybe giving a little bit more time to because he is a bit cheaper. I'm not expecting quite as much from him, and he's still playing in a good attack, and overall his price just makes him probably a bit of a safer hold for me. I don't need to play him every single week. A lot of the weeks he is on the bench for me, and just having a decent 5 to 5.5 million midfielder in there as your 5th option enables quite a lot of other stuff in my side. So whilst he has been a bit frustrating, I'm still not really seeing anyone else around that price point, especially considering the price I bought him at, that I can maybe bring in for him that gives me anything more than he's already providing. Up top, as I mentioned, Solanke already got the assist, and he's got Fulham and Bournemouth to come in the next 2 game weeks. I don't think that's too bad, and I think he's okay to hold on to, although if I need funds, there are cheaper strikers elsewhere that I could look to maybe release those funds and bolster perhaps my midfield or other positions as well. Now, obviously, Isak hasn't played yet, but I sold Haaland, part of a hit overall for Hall, Palmer and Isak, and out went Johnson, who scored, Mikolenko, who got the clean sheet, although I probably wouldn't have started him anyway, truth be told, and Haaland, who blanked. I think that does pay off over the long term. So far, not, but 2 of my players are yet to play, and I do have high hopes for Isak tonight. Fingers crossed it doesn't look like pie on my face by the time you actually come to watching this video. On my bench is where a lot of the issues lie. I've got Calvert-Lewin, I've got Lewis, and I've got Greaves. Greaves I can just hold on to. I think he'll start playing again pretty soon. And Lewis and Calvert-Lewin are much more problematic for me, considering my 8th attacker is currently Calvert-Lewin. That needs to be changed this game week. He's been a nightmare player for me on my wildcard in game week 6. No returns since then, all 2s and 1s for him for 6 or 7 game weeks in a row now. He's definitely got to go, and that's the move that I'm probably going to need to make this game week, if not for a hit, definitely for free. Lewis is another player that could easily go in the next few game weeks. I am wondering if I can hold on to him for another couple, just because he's starting and because City's fixtures after the Liverpool game aren't looking too bad, but City just fundamentally aren't keeping clean sheets. In fact, they have conceded the highest XG out of any team in the last 3 game weeks so far, because we still haven't seen Newcastle and West Ham play, of course. That's the only reason it's so far, but very poor from them. Lewis is maybe just hanging on to a starting spot by the skin of his teeth at the moment, and I do feel like a benching is coming, but Pep is still playing him, so for the time being I might be able to hold on to him, although I'm not particularly happy about it. So let's waste no more time looking at my team from game week 12. Let's start looking at my team ahead with my transfer plans in mind for game week 13. But before we do, of course, do let me know what you scored in game week 12 so far and whether or not you're beating me for this game week. Right then, so let's have a look at how I'm set up ahead of game week 13 with the transfers in mind. And spoiler alert, as you can see, I have already made a transfer, a very early transfer, which is rare for me for game week 13. And it immediately makes my side look quite a lot better, because thankfully, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is no longer in my FPL side. It took me 6 weeks too long, arguably even since the wild card, too long since I removed him again. But João Pedro has come in for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he was an absolute top target for me ahead of game week 13. Wrote in my notes, even at the start of last game week, after he'd come off the bench against Man City, that I really wanted him at the latest ahead of that Southampton home fixture, which is a fantastic fixture for João Pedro. Now, the problem with Pedro, if I have a look at his data so far, is the minutes haven't been amazing since he came back from injury. 25 minutes against Man City, and then increase that to 63 against Bournemouth. He's definitely building up the minutes, but I do think that early sub against Bournemouth was more game state than anything else, and he probably could have continued. And it was just the fact that he was the most recently coming back from injury that maybe, well, in the forward line anyway for Brighton, that made him the easiest player to bring off once they had that man sent off. So I think for the game weeks to come, because he's got another week to get even fitter again, I would be surprised if his minutes didn't increase. And as we saw at the start of the season before he got injured, it was 80 plus minutes week on week. So it was 81, 90, 90. And Hertzler has consistently called him one of the most important players in his side, a leader and the talismanic pick. So I do really like the look of him. There wasn't many reasons why I could not go for him this week, and once I saw he came off unscathed against Bournemouth, he was straight in for me for Calvert-Lewin. And anything else I do this week, because I've only got one free transfer, will have to now be for a hit. But I think the risk is worth it with João Pedro. His price is going to skyrocket this week. It's already gone up, and with this sort of data, 0.72 XGI per 90, there's not really much for me to say he's not a good pick right now. So looking elsewhere, I think my team's pretty well set up. My bus team captaincy is on Salah, who again, against Man City, I think is absolutely fine. But there are issues arising. And as you can see on my bench, Semenyo is red flagged. I've also got Rico Lewis there, and Greaves obviously isn't getting minutes so far, but I do expect him to come back in soon. Elsewhere, I think my starting 11 right now, I'd be pretty happy with. So across my midfield, Palmer and Burmo, Salah obviously got the armband, and Rodgers. Rodgers is definitely the weak link this week, and I would have hoped to be playing Semenyo. But with the suspension, I don't think it's worth a -4 to effectively be benching Rodgers and playing someone other than Semenyo. There aren't many players that I would predict to necessarily outscore Rodgers consistently. If the game week was played 100 times, I don't think many times I could pick a player that is always going to be outscoring Rodgers by 4 points, if that makes sense. And also, it just pushes me down a path where I'm probably spending more money to remove Semenyo for another upgrade, and that makes it more difficult for me to get players in next week. So with that in mind in particular, let's take a look at the transfer screen as to what I'm looking at doing next game week, because that really colours what I'm able to do even with a hit this week. So a part of the reason I moved early on João Pedro is because next week I really want to be manoeuvring Mbeumo out for someone like a Bukayo Saka. Now, unfortunately, the problem I've got right now is I come in 0.1 out of budget, over budget. So I would have a bit of a problem there. And again, my budget isn't really giving me many favours. So if I was to remove Semenyo for a hit this week, it's most likely going to be for a player more expensive than him, meaning that I'd have even less money, and I definitely need to be removing a player and giving a bigger downgrade elsewhere in order to do it. And of course, the extra hit as well. So my plan for this week is very much to just hold on to the transfers I've already made, not take the hit if at all possible. Now, obviously, injuries could prevent me from doing that, but I'm very keen not to run into budget problems ahead of game week 14, where I do think that when we look at next week's fixtures for Mbeumo, going into this sort of run, he is going to be a sell for me, considering the fact that his underlying data over the last 3 game weeks has looked pretty poor since Wissa came back in and Mbeumo has been playing a little wider. So 0.0 XG, 0.09, that will be the one shot he had, and then 0.0 again. He's a player that I think needs to probably go in the next couple of game weeks, and makes the perfect excuse for me to bring in Saka and complete that triple up in midfield of premium assets. So how am I going to do it? Well, next week, my plan is probably, as it stands, and it could change, to potentially downgrade Solanke to Matheus Cunha, who is another player I'm extremely tempted by. Obviously, last 4 game weeks have been phenomenal for him, and any of you that have bought him earlier than me have really enjoyed the points, but I still don't think it's too late to the party if I bring him in ahead of game week 14, arguably even this week. But again, it'd be for a hit this week, and I still think Solanke's a great hold for now. So do I want to be removing Solanke for a hit at home to Fulham when Matheus Cunha has Bournemouth at home? I'm not sure it's worth it just yet. But next week, if it brings me Bukayo Saka, especially with these fixtures to come for Cunha rather, I think it is probably worth it. Everton, West Ham, who really struggled, Ipswich and Leicester, I really like it. Now, obviously, longer term, there are question marks, but I think you can probably hold on to him all the way through to game week 22 if you wanted. I don't think Man United, Spurs, Forest, Newcastle, Chelsea is that bad of a run. It just gets a lot tougher around game week 23. Arsenal at home, Aston Villa, Liverpool. That's where it gets really quite poor. So I think for the time being, I'm willing to hold on to Solanke, not take the hit, and hope that I've got a playing 11 this game week. Now, obviously, injuries do happen. There is Champions League football, but a lot of the players that I think are risks, let's say, are not playing in midweek. So João Pedro not playing in midweek. You've got Isak and Hall won't be playing in midweek either. So I think a lot of those picks are maybe lower risk, and then the players that are playing in midweek tend to be very good for the minutes anyway. So Gabriel, you would expect Raya to be fine as a goalkeeper. Gabriel rarely gets injured, obviously touch wood, but we'll see. And then you've got players like Solanke who could easily be rested. And then outside of that, Salah is an absolute machine as well. So I think it's fairly low risk. And Palmer, of course, I forgot to mention, also doesn't even play in Europe at the moment, not even registered for European competition. So there are a number of players that I think are relatively low risk. There are a couple that are a bit higher. But again, I think taking the early transfer on this occasion was probably worth it for me. And hopefully it doesn't come back to bite me. If it does, -4 is maybe just it's the risk that I had to take, and I think it's probably going to be worth it for me. Overall, though, really happy with my starting 11 as it stands. Double Arsenal defence, Porro at home to Fulham, double Newcastle as well with Crystal Palace away from home for Hall and Isak, I think is absolutely fine. Palmer and Burmo and Salah in the midfield, absolutely fine again. Rodgers is the issue. And up front, having a triple up of Solanke, Isak and Pedro, again, feels absolutely okay. Any of you out there still with Haaland in the team, I do think that this week is a very easy time to be taking him out of your 11, considering it's now away at Liverpool and there's just so many other good premium assets who are coming into a patch of really good fixtures. So I'll take Lewis's fixtures, obviously same team, as an example. It's not a bad run, but how many of these fixtures are you actually looking at captaining Erling Haaland for? I would argue probably none of them. So Liverpool, Forest, Crystal Palace, Man United, Villa, I think all the way through to game week 17, which is a 5-game week stretch. If you haven't removed Erling Haaland already, I think now is probably the time to do so, considering Salah's got good fixtures, Saka's got great fixtures, Palmer's got great fixtures, and you've got a load of strikers, not just one or two, a load of strikers, like the 3 I've already got, but also like Matheus Cunha, like Nicholas Jackson as well, who are consistently getting good points. I think Haaland is just a little bit too expensive to be holding on to if you're not captaining, and over the next few game weeks, I personally wouldn't be captaining him. Now, all that being said, he's always going to get chances. He's always going to score points. So this isn't me saying you absolutely have to get rid of him. Of course, it's your own team. Do what you want with it. But for me, the reason I sold him is because he's a little bit too expensive for a player. I'm not captaining him. And although the form's not great, I do expect him to score points over the next few game weeks. I do expect him to revert back to the mean. If that's averaging 1 goal a game week, I reckon I can get that out of a lot of these strikers that I've already got in my side anyway. Now, obviously, Haaland's data suggests that he should average around 1 goal a game week over the season. He does obviously explode every now and then, but we're looking for the moments where he's most likely to. And with the next 5 fixtures in mind, I don't think it's the most likely time that we'll see 5 or 6 goals during that stretch, if not more. And I think I can take that on for a lot less money and using that money in my midfield instead. So there we have it. That is my team as it stands ahead of game week 13. Obviously, we've still got 2 to play tonight with Hall and Isak, so fingers crossed on them. You'll be watching this after they've either hauled or done absolutely nothing for me. And I've already made that early transfer for João Pedro. Now let me know in the comments below, what are your transfer plans ahead of game week 13? If you've got any major questions or conundrums ahead of the deadline, do let me know as well. I'll try to get back to absolutely all of you. And as we wrap up the video, please do remember to leave a like if you enjoyed today's video and subscribe if you want to see any of my future content. All of that really does help me out. In the meantime though, good luck in game week 13, and I'll see you later on this week as we start locking in our sides with my team selection video ahead of the deadline.